With a bang, energy and change came to every part of our universe. Seismic or small, it continues.
Change is all around us, shaped by technology and human ingenuity. We can make it work for you and your business.
Welcome. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the time. Really grateful to be here. My name is Wesley Tucker. I am a professional electrical engineer by background. I work for Accenture as a industry consultant, specializing in technology and strategy. I've been fortunate enough, post becoming a professional engineer, to spend about the last 10 years working in truly transformative digital programs. I'm very grateful to be able to talk to you today. I have a very interesting case study. If I'm honest, the presentation is less about the case study and more about why it was successful, and I'd like to share a little bit about that. I've worked across the African continent. I was lucky enough to work just out of Broken Hill in the outback on a desalination plant as well, a little bit closer to Australia. More recently, I'm working as the interim SVP for one of our mining clients, helping them there with their digital transformation and building out the strategy. I know 2020 has been a lot about Netflix and home and being at home, and so please excuse the theme as we work our way through it, and I will take you through this presentation. You can see the rocking horse in the middle there, and I think it's quite analogous because sometimes with digital transformation we do feel like we're on a bit of a rocking horse, and all we're really doing is moving backwards and forwards and not getting anywhere. But hopefully today will inspire you to be that racehorse in the background, and we can do something truly different. Before I start on the presentation as a whole and on the case study that I chose to talk about, I wanted to start my presentation, and I've committed to start most of my presentations with a call out, not just to gender diversity, but all forms of diversity. And I think in the mining industry, we have a burning problem that we need to really address. As you can see, and I pulled some stats just from the Women in Mining organization, a really powerful organization. If we only have 16% of women in our industry, that has only improved by 1%, a very poor representation of leadership, and lastly, quite a large gender pay gap, which is not going to help. All the things I'm about to talk to you about in the use case that I've chosen, in some of the experience that I've seen, I don't think any of it will really matter, and I don't think we'll make much of an impact if we don't address this, this burning ambition that we have. Creating an inclusive space for people to work, having a diverse workforce means diversity of thought. Diversity of thought is the change that we're going to need. All of these programs are critical on our people, and so I wanted to call that out today. So I suppose the question is, what is it that we can do? What do I try and do every day, and what as leaders can we do? Let's make sure we're creating a safe and inclusive space for a talented and diverse workforce. I like the concept of reverse mentoring. Are you making sure that the people that you surround yourself with are people that are different to you, come from a different background, for all the different reasons that we could say that they are diverse? And lastly, I think it's time to be brave. It's time to step up and have a hard conversation about what does it really mean to create an inclusive workforce. So thank you for letting me have that say. Like I said, it's not going to help any of the things I talk about if we don't really build an inclusive workforce. So thank you for that commitment. So I wanted to present a problem set to you, not because it's the most complex problem, not because it's necessarily the most difficult problem, but I think it is a problem that is one worth sharing simply because it has overcome the perils of the POC gap. It isn't one of the many pilots that have been run with data analytics. I'm sure you'll hear a lot about predictive maintenance, but the main reason, not only that it overcame the chasm of POCs, is the client themselves actually scaled this out. They didn't rely on multiple years and years of consultants, years and years of outsourcing. Most of the design and growth actually came from in-house, and I think that's really exciting. With about 52 underground continuous miners working in underground coal mines, Sasol is one of the largest underground coal mining as well as a petrochemical company, but in the Southern Hemisphere. So a really good example of where you can start. They have a very complex environment. They're in South Africa, where you have a very low level of high levels of unemployment and low levels of education. Very difficult place to embed new technologies, but critical in the fourth industrial revolution for success of the industry moving forward. So a great proving ground. The reason I call this out is actually the see, do, and lead approach that we took to this problem. We let the workforce, we let the people, we let the communities, we let them see the first time, We work with them the second time to let them do it themselves, and then they lead it going forward. The other reason it's quite exciting is I think you've seen problems like this before. When we arrived on the scene, there were 208 initiatives identified over a period of a year. Way too many initiatives for any company to really look at, no idea where to start. How do you begin? We took that list of 208, we whittled it down to 6. We took from that list, we went down to a further 3, and we took all 3 to MVP. And 2 of those post MVP have moved into full production. And I'll talk a little bit about the lessons learned, but the one most certainly is to focus and dive deep on the things that you think that matter. On these 2 initiatives, the one I'm talking about today, data pulled from the machine as is, no additional sensors, no additional investment. They had a historian in the OSI sub-Pi that was collecting the data already, pulled that data into Azure, built some predictive hidden Markov models on top of that to really try and predict the predictive maintenance or the condition of the machine. The undercarriage of the continuous miners is what with the subassemblies is what we're really interested in. Obviously, a massive benefit when you have so many machines because you've got the ability to scale across very similar data sets. You can use data sets and failures of one to learn from the other one. But also when a subassembly does fail in situ, it's very difficult and it takes a very long time to do the fix. And most of the time we found through the data that when they did do the fix of that subassembly, further errors were almost bound to happen, mainly because the maintenance was done ineffectually, given that it was underground. Talking a little bit about how some of these, how the program was run and how it was successful, not just about the CG lead. We ran an academy on the side of that to really upskill and teach everybody about why these technologies matter, to teach them to trust the technologies. But most importantly, it was designed with the users. It didn't live in a bubble. It worked with other reporting systems, with tribology reports, and gave the maintenance engineers and the shift foreman a centralized place to see what they're doing. They helped design and co-create what the interface looked like. They spoke through what the workflow would look like and how they would use this going forward. The results are absolutely outstanding, with a 12 times return on investment over 4 years. As we've said, the first couple rolled out originally by a distributed team of data scientists from Accenture, slowly moving into the team at Sassel, rolling them out themselves. And now we do very little support, and the vast majority are being rolled out. They're live on about half of their continuous miners already. I think what's really important here is, if you think about the multiple benefits that are available and the way in which we design these systems to work, how do we make sure that we approach all of these problems in the same way, and how do we build a foundation for absolute success? The continuous miners didn't require any additional data, didn't require any additional investment. We did an analysis of the benefits and the ratios of where we should be focusing on those 208 initiatives. So I'm going to pause a little bit for questions. If there are any, feel free to ping them into the chat, and the team will pass them on to me, and I can answer any questions that you have. The last thing that I'll say about this is, if you think about the complex environment of the underground mining, it is a very good test case for where we can make these sorts of technologies successful. If we can take an underground coal mine in sub-Saharan Africa, with very limited connectivity, and we can pull that data, we can put it in Azure, and we can do the predictive reports, and we can start getting up to 48 hours of warning as to when we think there'll be a failure. But not only that, we can start sharing data across all of these different places. We're starting to set ourselves up for success. At the same time, we use this as the investment test case to set up the Sassel Academy, to make sure that we were learning, to set up the data lake, to set up the environment, and actually to start training up the workforce to be able to handle what they're doing. So appreciate I'm using the Netflix analogy. Just wanted to make sure that you're all still with me. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll take them through. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 10 key principles of transformation that we think are important when taking these things forward, and really looking to change your business. And I think it's critical to look at it not just as transformation for transformation's sake, but how do we use digital transformation as a way of adding incremental value into your business. I've spoken a little bit about selecting projects. I think we're at a point now where, when I look at how we use predictive models in underground settings, how we use them in the process setting, how we use them on supply chain, in our functions, in finance and HR, there is absolutely no doubt these technologies have proven themselves time and time again. The question really is where do we deploy them, and can we make that culture shift to be able to make them work within the business and the environment that you're operating in? So without further ado, let me talk a little bit about the 10 key things that we think are absolutely critical, and I'll link them a little bit back to some of the programs that we're seeing. So we talk a lot about strategy, and I know a few years ago we used to talk about, designing a strategy, identifying a strategy, and what we actually found is all strategies are very similar, and that to build them in a black box and to hide them away is not going to help. Successful companies like Tesla, they publish their strategies, they tell everybody what they're trying to do. But the critical thing is your business strategy and your digital strategy need to align, and they need to be the same thing. If you're chasing one strategy in your business and you're chasing a separate strategy with digital, they're never going to converge and you're not going to be successful. You've spent a long time defining your business strategy and leading your company along that journey. Don't now suddenly shift into a completely different strategy. We talk a lot about senior buy-in and executive buy-in, but I think it's about that narrative and consistency that comes down as well. Just because you bought in, just because you've said it's important, just because you're funding it and you see it as a critical event, doesn't mean that you don't have to continue the narrative and continue the consistency on your way down. Your workforce will look up and the people on your team will look up to see if what these changes are, there's something that the leadership is buying into and is going to be important. Lastly, and I spoke a little bit about this in the Sasol use case, is culture and new ways of working are critical. We talk a lot about lean, we talk a lot about fail fast, we talk a lot about that culture of really trying to experiment, but you have to embed that culture and you have to embed new ways of working. The way in which we approached the Sasol problem was very much in an agile way. You have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. You have to show people progress. The old ways of going in, running workshops, having long discussions and waiting 3 or 4 months before people are seeing tangible results, that's destined for failure. We live in a culture of instant gratification, and so we need to start giving our people more and more pieces of gratification. And most importantly, we need to show them that they are part of the design of the system, and if they take their time and they use a lot of their valuable time to help us design these systems, that they build them, that we show them the incremental value, and we show them the incremental changes as they come forward. Apologies. Lastly, and I spoke about the 208 initiatives. Many clients we've been to, they've had a program where we've gone and defined what we can possibly do. What is the art of the possible? How many pilots are out there? How many programs can we run? How many different things can we do? And all you end up with is a massive list of things that you need to challenge and no real idea as to how to go there. The main thing is to look at what is the critical pain points in your business. You know them, you've known them for a long time. The people in your business know them and they've known them for a very long time. There is no reason to go and reinvent the wheel, and your challenges, although they may seem fundamentally different, are quite similar to challenges in other industries. So really understand that pain point, really understand them, and get a bit of a pilot program going. That doesn't mean pilot 208 things. That doesn't mean get into the world where you've got 10 or 15 things running in pilot. Choose the few things, and I'll get to this a bit later, and really make sure that you double down on that. In this day and age, and it goes absolutely without saying, in everything that we use, all of the technology we use, the user experience is key. So don't think about it as technology, think about it as a user experience, think about it in user centricity. Bring people along for the journey. Most of our workforce are already digitally enabled. COVID has given us the absolute gift of everybody knows how to use technology now. So as we bring them along for the journey, make sure that we're designing with their use cases in mind. We always use the example of the operator. He's wearing gloves, he's in a cold environment or a hot environment, and we give him additional technology to use with zero thought about what that experience is going to be like. How is he going to work with that technology? How is it going to be additive to his day rather than be different? The key success with the Sasol program was that we worked with the team to design it, but then we brought the information into one place so that it made their lives easier to be able to look at it. And we slowly iterated and made the changes that they needed, that they saw the benefit they saw the benefit as we walked forward. I think the important thing, I like to refer to it as manage and measure. So you can inspire, you can have the right capability, you can have a pathway to value, you can have all of these things, but it does come back down to, how do we measure success? How do we keep ourselves honest in terms of where we're going? I love the idea of agile. We've used agile for a very long time, but the major pitfall of agile is it just gives you a blank check and a license to continue to iterate and never really work towards that MVP, never really work to where you want to be. So not just as a team, that you understand where you're going, but that agile ways of working and the agile methodology and the agile terminology is invested in the SVP and VP levels, and it's codified from the top and works its way all the way down. The expectation at the management level and the metrics that we're reporting at the management level need to be the same the whole way through. My personal feeling on this one is we need to keep it simple. We can't have a KPI report of 300 KPIs all in different ways, all for different programs. You really need to boil down to what is the value that you're tracking to achieve? How much value have you achieved? What is your budget and what is your spend? And from there, you can build down into further agile metrics. You can leverage DevOps, you can have better reporting, you can do all of those things. But how do you roll up into something a lot more consistent? Trust is an important one, and it is a very difficult thing to build within a culture of an organization. I think that technology will help us build trust because we need to create more transparency over what we're doing, but it cannot be you do it because I tell you to do it. People already have, our workforce already has way too many things going on. They're already pressurized. There's already a lot going on. To force people to use additional technologies without them really embracing the reason to do that is never going to pass. I think over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of creation of the CDO function. And I've seen many models of this, whether the CDO sits underneath the CIO, whether we spin out something a lot further away to protect it from the antibodies of the organization. Either way, the CDO and the CIO need to be intrinsically linked. The CIO generally has been around for a very long time and is responsible for a lot of the information systems that are already in place, a lot of the critical systems, the ERP systems, the finance data, etc. It's important that the CIO and the CDO sort of live together. And I think that integrated function for a period of time to really achieve scale is quite critical. And then lastly, and I've touched on this, we need to select a few. We need to go deep. And the most important thing is our sourcing. Our commercial teams need to have some skin in the game. So if we're going to go after contract, we're going to go to market, we're going to procure, we need to make sure that our sourcing and commercial teams know what they're doing. That doesn't only mean that we can apply some of these technologies within the space as well. That's definitely true. But I think most importantly, when we go through these processes, we're not 100% sure what the end in mind is. And that MVP sort of agile contracting is quite important. Again, while keeping within the bounds of what we need, it's not a blank check to do whatever you want, but you do need to pause, and you do need to be able to contract a lot quicker. Otherwise, sometimes the contracting period takes longer than the actual program to get to MVP. So thank you very much for the time. I greatly appreciate it. I have some questions that have come through. I'll answer them now. I'll put you on the pause screen there. So one of the questions was what instrumentation was on the machine. So we pulled data from wherever we could get data, and we didn't add any additional data. So a lot of these were Joy machines. A lot of the machines come with their standard sort of measurement times of what they're doing and where they're going. We also pulled a whole lot of data from the electrical systems, so we had an idea of sort of what the current is looking like, what the phase was looking like, the quality of the power coming in, any sort of changes in that. We had a little bit of Conmon data coming through, but then we also had offline data from tribology that came from the oil analysis and all those sorts of things. So we try to bring a lot of that data together. And then most importantly, we pulled a huge amount of historical data. It's the historical data that really helps and builds from there. One of the other questions that came through, and I touched on it a little bit, is around that POC chasm. A lot of clients that we talk to, they're sitting in an area where they've got a whole lot of things in flight, and they're looking to jump them over that. And I think I've touched on a little bit in the 10 key steps there, but it's about focus, it's about shortening the list, and it's about prioritizing, especially with companies that don't have a huge amount of free cash flow to invest in these things, and rightfully so. How do you make sure you're picking the 2 or 3 key ones, and then you bring the people along for the journey, because they're the ones that are going to make it successful. I think the last point about predictive maintenance specifically, and the way in which we make this successful, is you need a diverse range of data sets, but you also need to get started. And information today is much better if you just get going and you start bringing it together. But you build your architecture, and you leverage the cloud, and you leverage IoT to start growing that out. So your architecture strategy needs to be quite critical and needs to be laid out. So then, as you start adding more data to these machines, as you start bringing more things on, you have this kind of linear scale of data as well. Fortunately, the way the cloud is working, the way modern architecture works, that shouldn't be a barrier anymore. And in fact, your people, the speed at which you can roll things out, that's probably going to be the biggest barrier. And then I'll leave you with the last thing around, I think we have an opportunity now to fundamentally change our industry, fundamentally change the way they work. Going back from that diversity concept and moving it into how do we create a space where everybody in our workforce can work, can be involved, everybody in our communities can be involved in our industry. How do we use technology to enable people that are previously disadvantaged from the industry, whether that is through a lack of education, whether it is through a disability, how do we use technology for that? And I think these are some of the use cases that build the foundations that allow us to fundamentally shift and change our business. So I'm very grateful for the time. Thank you very much. You'll have a wonderful afternoon, and it is an excellent conference, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you very much, and please enjoy the rest of the day. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions.
We've had an absolute